The conference room inside Samuel Parker's law office felt like a ticking time bomb ready to burst. 20 relatives crammed into a space fit for 10, and the tension was dense enough to slice apart. My father, Henry, sat in the front row, his $1,200 suit immaculately tailored, glancing at his Rolex every half minute, as if something else demanded his presence. Beside him, my mother, Linda, hugged her luxury handbag to her chest, her fingers stiff with strain. She hadn't uttered a word to me since the funeral, only sent me frosty looks that said everything she wanted to. "This is dragging on forever," Dad grumbled to his attorney, irritation in his tone. "I've got a board meeting at 3. Even now, even during his own mother's will reading. His mind couldn't stray from business. That was Henry Miller defined in a single line. A man who recognized every price tag but missed the meaning behind them. Uncle Charles leaned against the wall, his wide frame taking up space meant for 2. The eldest of Grandma's 3 sons, he shared her stature but none of her wisdom. His bloodshot gaze flitted about the room, assessing, scheming, already counting cash he hadn't touched yet. His third wife, Emily, a woman half his age, filed her nails idly, looking unimpressed. She'd only known Grandma for 8 months, yet here she was, ready to claim her share. $60 million, Charles muttered to his brother. James, even split 3 ways after taxes? That's still $13 million each, minimum. James nodded quickly, sweat forming on his brow despite the cool air. The youngest brother, James, had spent adulthood drifting through casinos, always one gamble short of fortune. His ex-wife sat 3 rows behind him with their 2 teenagers, kids I'd only met once. Everyone in that room wanted a slice of Maggie Miller's legacy. The side seats overflowed with cousins, distant kin, and strangers who somehow claimed family ties. One guest's new boyfriend was literally jotting notes into his phone, already dreaming of investments. It was revolting. 4 days earlier, we'd buried Grandma, and now these scavengers were practically licking their lips. "Where is Samuel?" Dad snapped, his voice slicing through the murmurs. "This delay is unacceptable." Just then, the door creaked open, and Samuel Parker stepped inside, clutching a leather portfolio. At 74, he moved with the unhurried steadiness of someone who'd long ago stopped rushing for anyone. He'd represented Grandma for 40 years, witnessed her construct her shipping dynasty from nothing, stood by her through victories and defeats alike. His expression revealed nothing, but when his gaze met mine, something wordless passed between us. Not sympathy exactly, but a quiet understanding. "Thank you all for being here," Samuel began, placing the folder on the podium. "Before we start, I must remind you that Mrs. Miller's will was crafted with precise attention and is legally airtight. Any challenge will face the full strength of the firm she herself helped establish." Dad snorted. "Just get on with it, Samuel. We all know the reason we're here." Samuel's jaw tightened slightly, though he kept his calm demeanor intact. "All right then. The final will and testament of Maggie Miller, executed 8 months before her death." The crowd fell utterly quiet. This was the moment, the one everyone had been waiting for, the jackpot that would erase their debts, bankroll their fantasies, and feed their greed. But money wasn't on my mind. What filled my head was Grandma's frail hand in mine. 4 weeks earlier, how light it had felt, like she was already drifting elsewhere. I was remembering the last sunset we'd watched from her bedroom window, the glow catching the tears on her cheeks as she whispered that she was proud of me. I thought about how none of these people had been there for that, not a single one. Samuel opened the folder and withdrew the first sheet. The paper looked formal, heavy, official, carrying weight. But I noticed something else inside that leather binder. Multiple envelopes, each one sealed, waiting. Samuel's fingers paused briefly on the final envelope, and when he lifted his eyes, they locked directly on me. The attorney cleared his throat, straightened his glasses, and began reading aloud. And from his opening words, I knew Grandma had arranged something no one expected. Because Maggie Miller never followed tradition, and she wasn't about to start with her farewell. 4 years ago, I was no one notable, just another construction foreman in Seattle, managing crews on office projects and returning to a 1-bedroom flat that smelled like my neighbor's dinner. My mornings began at 6 sharp with black coffee and blueprints, and my nights ended around 8 with a cold beer and whatever game was on TV. It was steady, ordinary, and I was content with it. My relationship with my family had always been like a puzzle missing its pieces. Dad, Henry Miller, was a high-profile investment banker who moved us from Seattle to San Francisco when I was 15, then moved himself right back to Seattle when I turned 18, leaving me to handle college alone. He sent money, sure, but never time, never care. Our calls lasted only as long as it took for him to confirm I wasn't tarnishing the family name. "You're working construction?" he'd said when I told him about my job with a business degree. "Ethan, that's beneath you." "I like building things," I'd told him. "Things that endure." He'd hung up without another word. That was 3 years before Grandma fell ill. Mom, Linda, was worse, just in her own fashion. She'd married Dad for his surname and the prestige it carried. Her days were spent at the country club, arranging charity events she couldn't describe and posing for society photos. When I was little, she'd sometimes glance at me like she'd forgotten I existed, like I was a forgotten accessory she'd bought and misplaced. My uncles were each their own special kind of failure. Charles, the oldest, had burned through 5 marriages and 5 companies, every collapse grander than the one before. He could sell disaster as a sure bet, right up until it imploded. James, the youngest, lived as though life were an endless Vegas weekend. He'd call maybe once a year, always asking for a quick loan we both knew would never come back. Then came that October morning that changed everything. I was reviewing building permits when my phone buzzed. Seeing Grandma Maggie's name flash across the screen was rare enough to make me step outside to answer. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said, and I could hear something new in her tone, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. "I need to see you." "Can you visit this weekend?" "Of course, Grandma." "Is everything okay?" "We'll talk when you arrive." The drive to Cannon Beach should have taken 2 hours and 15 minutes. I made it in 100 flat. Grandma's clifftop mansion overlooked the Pacific, 30 rooms of glass and timber she'd built back in '95 after her company went global. But when I arrived, she wasn't in any of those grand rooms. I found her in the kitchen, brewing tea the way she always had, calm, steady, like the world wasn't shifting beneath her feet. "Pancreatic cancer," she said plainly, pouring me a cup. "Stage 4. The doctors say maybe 20 months if luck's on my side." The mug seared my palms, but I held it anyway. I needed something solid to hold on to. "What about treatment? Second opinions?" "There must be something." "I'll fight it," she said, sitting across from me at the same breakfast table where she'd served me pancakes every Sunday as a kid. "But I need someone with me, someone I trust. Your father's already talking about power of attorney. Your uncles are circling like sharks. I need someone who cares about me, not my assets." "I'll move in tomorrow," I said instantly. "Ethan, your job, your life in Seattle. Your job, your life in Seattle. You're my family, Grandma. My true family. The job will wait until I return." She leaned across the table and clasped my hand. Her fingers felt delicate like bird wings, yet her grasp remained firm. "Do you know what I cherish most about you? When you were 7, there was a kid at your school, Oliver, I think. His father had lost his position and he stopped bringing food. You handed him your lunch money every single day for a month. Came home starving, yet never said a thing. I only learned about it when Oliver's mother phoned to thank me for raising such a gentle boy. I didn't realize you knew about that. Mothers always know, darling. And grandmothers know even deeper. That was when I understood you grasped what truly counts in this life. Not wealth, not prestige, but the quiet act of being there for someone who needs you. That evening, I called my supervisor and requested open-ended leave. I packed my flat within 6 hours. By the following evening, I was unpacking in one of Grandma's spare rooms, prepared for whatever awaited us next. Neither of us imagined then it would become 20 months of discovery, grief, and the final test of what family truly signifies. The earliest sign of trouble appeared exactly 1 week after I moved in. Dad's Mercedes rolled up the driveway at 8 in the morning, and he entered without knocking, clutching a briefcase of paperwork. "Mother, we need to talk about your finances," he declared, not even glancing at me during breakfast. "Given your condition, we must safeguard the property from tax complications." Grandma lowered her coffee cup deliberately. "Henry, I haven't seen you for 8 months, and your first words aren't even a greeting." "This matters," he pressed, spreading documents across the table. "Sign this page and that one. It's just shifting some assets into secured trusts. Routine procedure." She lifted one of the forms, read it slowly, then pushed them all back toward him. "These trusts would grant you control of my accounts instantly. Someone must handle affairs if you become unable to. I have cancer, Henry, not confusion, and I have Samuel to handle legal issues. Now, would you prefer to share breakfast with your son and me? Or did you drive all this distance simply to rob me? His face flushed crimson. I'm only trying to assist you. No, you're trying to benefit yourself. There's a difference. One I taught you long ago, though. Apparently, the lesson didn't stick. He grabbed his papers and stormed out. Through the window, I watched him make a phone call before driving away. Within an hour, Mom called Grandma's landline. Maggie, dear. Mom's fake sweetness oozed through the speaker. Henry's just concerned. Perhaps I should come visit. Help with arrangements. Linda, you haven't stepped foot in this house in 3 years. Don't start pretending to care now. The line went dead. Grandma turned to me with acid smile. The vultures smelled death. Ethan, watch how quickly they circle. She was right. Over the next 4 months, the attempts became more aggressive. Uncle Charles showed up one night, reeking of bourbon, pounding on the door at midnight. I need $60,000, he shouted when I answered. My restaurant's going under. She's sitting on millions while her son loses everything. Go home, Charles. You're drunk. You little leech, he snarled, jabbing a finger at my chest. Playing the good grandson, while we all know you're just waiting for your payday. How much is she promising you? 10%, 20%. I'm here because I love her. Love? He spat the word like it was poison. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't save businesses. Now get her down here or I'm coming in. I blocked the doorway. Try it, we stood there. Uncle and nephew family divided by greed and principle. Finally, he backed away. This isn't over. That money belongs to her son's, not some charity case. Grandson. The worst part was that Grandma heard everything. I found her sitting by her bedroom window, tears on her cheeks. Did I fail them that badly? She whispered. How did my boys become such strangers? Uncle James's approach was different, but equally cruel. He hired a psychiatrist to evaluate Grandma, claiming she wasn't mentally fit to manage her affairs. The doctor arrived unannounced one Tuesday afternoon. I'm here for Maggie Miller's cognitive assessment, he announced. Grandma stood in the doorway, frail but fierce. Young man, I built a shipping empire from nothing, negotiated with unions and government officials, and ran board meetings until last year. I can still beat anyone in this house at chess. Recite Shakespeare from memory and balance my own checkbook. Now get off my property before I call the police and my lawyer. The doctor left, but James didn't stop. He called Adult Protective Services, claiming I was taking advantage of a vulnerable elder. The investigation was humiliating for Grandma, having to prove to strangers that she was staying in her own home by choice. Meanwhile, her health deteriorated. Chemotherapy ravaged her body. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. I learned to manage her medications, change IV bags, help her to the bathroom. The work was hard, but the emotional toll was worse. Watching this powerhouse of a woman who'd created a legacy and nurtured a family, reduced to wishing even one of her children would visit without hidden motives. Mom mailed flowers monthly with identical notes, thinking of you. Feel better soon, Linda. Never a visit, never a genuine call, just bouquets that Grandma asked me to deliver to the hospital instead. At least other patients could take joy in them. She said, someone should find comfort in my children's gestures, even if I can't. The betrayals stacked like winter drifts, cold and smothering. Each one chipped Grandma's heart a little more, until I feared she'd die of sorrow before the illness ended her. Yet through it all, she kept orchestrating something, meeting with Samuel, setting plans she refused to explain to me. 8 months before Grandma's passing, everything changed. It was a dull February morning when Samuel Parker's Lincoln sedan rolled up the driveway. He carried a heavy leather folder and a voice recorder, his face fixed with the focus of a man on assignment. Ethan, I'll need you to give us privacy, Grandma said, already wearing her best Navy outfit despite rarely leaving bed these days. Samuel and I have matters to settle. They shut themselves in her study for 4 hours. I heard the soft rustle of pages turning, the scratch of pens across papers, Samuel's deep voice posing questions, and Grandma's calm replies. When they finally came out, Samuel gave me a look I couldn't decipher. Your grandmother is an extraordinary woman, Ethan, he said, resting a hand on my shoulder. Remember, whatever happens in the next months, times might grow hard, but have faith in the plan. After he departed, I found Grandma in the study, gazing out at the sea. Several papers were scattered across her desk, but she quickly gathered them as I entered, tucking them into a locked drawer. What was that about, I asked. Protection, she said. Simply ensuring the right things occur for the right purposes. Over the coming weeks, Grandma seemed renewed by whatever she'd coordinated with Samuel. She began recording everything. Every missed visit, every manipulative message, every attempt to reach her fortune. She had me install a recorder on the house line. All perfectly legal for medical emergencies, she said with a grin. The tapes uncovered more than we had imagined. Dad phoning her physician to pry about her mental health. James trying to bribe her maid, Rosa, for copies of account records. Charles on a group call with both brothers plotting to dispute any will that excluded equal division of everything. The old woman won't last much longer, Charles said on one recording. We just need to make sure the kid doesn't sway her into anything foolish. I've already got my lawyer ready, Dad added. The instant she's gone, we'll request an immediate hold on all assets. Ethan won't see a cent. Grandma listened to these tapes beside me, her expression unmoved, though her hand quivered as she jotted notes. They're not even pretending anymore, she murmured softly. At least now I understand exactly where we stand. Her health worsened rapidly after that. The cancer had spread throughout her liver and bones. Hospice arrived in mid-April. I took a full leave from work, sleeping on a cot beside her bed in case she needed something during the night. Those final weeks were agonizing and beautiful in the same measure. We discussed everything during those long nights when pain kept her from resting. Her childhood during the Depression, eating flour soup and wearing cardboard shoes. How she'd launched her business with 2 trucks and a loan from a fisherman who believed in her first million. How she'd celebrated alone because her husband was already gone and her sons were too young to care. I wanted to give them everything I never had, she murmured one night, morphine making her tone hazy. But somewhere along the road, I gave them everything except what counted. Integrity, empathy, the awareness that money is a means, no to an end. 2 weeks before she passed, she clasped my hand with unexpected force. Ethan, I need you to swear something. When Samuel reads the will, whatever occurs, don't defend me. Don't justify my actions. Let them respond. Let them reveal exactly who they are. Grandma, what did you do? I'm correcting what I can, or as much as I can now. Just swear you won't get involved. Let Samuel manage everything. I promise. She smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. You're going to be all right, sweetheart. Better than all right. You're going to learn what true wealth is. Her funeral was arranged for a Thursday. She died on a Monday evening, watching the sunset turn the ocean gold and rose. Her final words were steady and serene. Ocean gold and rose. Her final words were steady and serene. The truth always comes up, Ethan. Like oil on water, it always rises to the surface. Look for it. The obituary appeared in 4 newspapers. Within hours, relatives I'd never known were phoning about service details. Dad flew in from San Francisco the next morning, already wearing black, already scheming. Mom came separately, ensuring society photographers captured her mourning. My uncles arrived together, a united front of entitlement. At the funeral, they all performed masterfully. Dad's eulogy on family loyalty and motherly love might have been moving if I hadn't overheard him call her a stubborn old fool on the phone the week before. The crying, the recollections they offered, the tender stories, all of it rang empty as glass. Samuel announced the will reading for the next week. The vultures gathered quickly, but I waited quietly, trusting whatever Grandma had arranged. The conference room at Samuel Parker's office could have been a stage set for a drama about greed. Every seat was filled, and people stood along the walls as if afraid to miss a single syllable. Dad sat up front with his personal attorney, a sharp-featured woman who kept scanning files on her tablet. Mom had brought her financial consultant, a twitchy man constantly tightening his tie. Uncle Charles popped his knuckles again and again, while James sweated through his shirt despite the air conditioning. Samuel arrived precisely at 2, carrying the same leather folder from that meeting 8 months earlier. He placed it down gently, adjusted his glasses, and studied every face in the room with the calm stare of someone who'd witnessed every variety of family conflict over his 40-year profession. Before we start, Samuel said, his voice steady with the weight of law and experience, I want to remind you all that Mrs. Miller signed this will 8 months ago, while of sound mind, observed by 3 doctors and 2 independent legal witnesses. Any effort to dispute it will face the complete power of this firm. Dad's attorney began to speak, but Samuel lifted his hand. Please save all questions until I have finished reading the entire statement. He opened the folder and withdrew the first paper. The last will and testament of Margaret Maggie Miller, dated February 15th of this year. To my son, Henry, I grant my entire set of family photographs, stored in albums within the study. Every birthday, every Christmas, every family moment you skipped while chasing your wealth. Perhaps viewing them will help you see what you traded away for achievement. Dad's expression shifted from eager to puzzled to furious in 3 seconds. Photographs? That's all? Samuel proceeded without acknowledging his reaction. To my son Charles, I give my personal cookbook, including every recipe you once insisted you could perfect, but never once prepared for me. May you finally realize that talking about doing and actually doing are separate things. Charles jumped up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. This is madness. Where's the fortune? To my son James, I leave my vintage deck of playing cards, the same set my father used to show me that gambling with love is the only wager you're bound to lose. James's face went crimson. She's ridiculing us. This entire will is a farce. To my daughter-in-law Linda, Samuel continued evenly, I bequeath my collection of costume jewelry, 25 pieces that appear valuable but hold little worth, much like the affection you showed me across the years. Mom gasped, her hand darting to the real pearls around her neck. How dare she? The room exploded in shouting, fury, and accusations flying like shrapnel. Samuel waited calmly for the uproar to fade, then withdrew a second envelope. To my grandson, Ethan Miller, I give my 1950 Cadillac coupe purchased with the first earnings from my business. It still runs because it's been cared for, not bought. Like love, it only requires steady attention to endure. I felt every gaze in the room turn on me with hatred so intense it might have melted steel. That's it? Dad yelled. Where's the 60 million? The coastal estate, the company, the portfolios? Samuel lifted a thick packet. Ah yes, the estate valued at 60 million. I have here a full financial declaration also signed 8 months ago. The room fell quiet as a tomb. 4 years back, after receiving her diagnosis, Mrs. Miller began dissolving her holdings. She sold the shipping company to her staff for $1, with the condition that all profits for 10 years fund their retirements. She sold every investment and property, turning it all into cash. 60 million in cash? Charles breathed. Where is it? Samuel's lips curved slightly, the first true emotion he'd displayed. Distributed as follows. 35 million established the Miller Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research, focused on pancreatic cancer in children. 10 million endowed full university scholarships for 250 first-generation students from working homes. 6 million supported 15 food banks and homeless shelters across California and Oregon. 3 million went to Doctors Without Borders. The silence was total. Even the air conditioner's hum was audible. The coastal mansion, Samuel went on, was transferred to California State Parks for $1 to become a public beach entrance and wildlife preserve. By Mrs. Miller's explicit wish, it will be named the Ethan Miller Preserve to honor the only relative who understood that the finest views shouldn't belong solely to those who can purchase them. No, Dad murmured. She wouldn't have. We're her children. That money belonged to us. Samuel retrieved one last paper. There remains a final allocation, 1.5 million held in trust, with Mr. Ethan Miller serving as the sole trustee. This fund may only be used for one specific purpose, to cover medical treatment and aid for any relative who becomes ill and has nothing else to rely on. As Mrs. Miller wrote, Ethan will still help those who don't deserve it because that's who he is. This trust ensures he can afford to remain true to himself. The conference room erupted in chaos. Dad lunged across the table, seizing Samuel's collar. You conspired with her? This is fraud, coercion, elder abuse. Samuel, utterly composed, replied, There are security cameras recording this incident. Mr. Miller, I recommend you sit down. Uncle Charles was already on the phone with his attorney, shouting about diminished capacity and undue influence. James even kicked a chair clear across the floor. Mom sat frozen, her face pale as paper, counting and recounting money that no longer existed. We'll ruin you! Dad jabbed a finger toward me, trembling with rage. You turned her against us. You stole our inheritance. I didn't know, I said softly. I had no idea she'd done this. Liar? Charles roared. 4 years living with her, and you expect us to believe that? Samuel cleared his throat. Mr. Ethan Miller was never told of these arrangements. Mrs. Miller insisted on that. She wanted his kindness to stay authentic, not influenced by knowledge of any potential inheritance. We have sworn statements from witnesses proving he was never present at any financial meetings. They stormed out one after another, hurling threats like confetti. This isn't finished, Dad warned. I'll spend whatever it takes to overturn this will. Best of luck, Samuel answered evenly. You'll be facing the American Cancer Society, 250 scholarship recipients, and the state of California. I'm sure that will read wonderfully in the headlines. When they'd left, Samuel handed me a sealed envelope. She asked that you read this privately. I drove to what was once Grandma's estate, now marked by a new sign reading, Future Site of Ethan Miller Preserve, opening next summer. I sat on the bluff where we used to watch sunsets and opened her letter. My beloved Ethan, if you're reading this, then Samuel has given you my final lesson to our family. I'm sorry you had to see their true faces, but you needed to witness it. You needed to realize that blood doesn't define family. Love does. The fortune was always destined to ruin them. If I'd left them millions, they'd have fought until lawyers drained it all. If he'd left them nothing directly, they'd have claimed you manipulated me. So I gave them exactly what they'd given me. Trinkets that seem valuable but mean nothing. They received what they earned. You received what you earned too. Not wealth because you never sought it. You got the truth that you're nothing like them. You got the peace of knowing that when someone needed you, you showed up. You got to be the name on something that brings happiness to families for generations. The $1.5 million in trust isn't really for them. We both know they'll never ask you for anything. Their pride won't allow it. It's for you to use however you think best, helping people who truly need it. I know you will. You've done it all your life, usually with far less. But your true inheritance is freedom. Freedom from questioning whether you're like them. Freedom from their toxicity. Freedom to live your life knowing you chose compassion over greed. And that decision made you rich in ways they'll never comprehend. Live fully, my dear boy. Create things that endure. Love people who earn it. And remember, the fortune I spent my life building only gained meaning when I gave it to those who'd use it wisely. With all my love, Grandma Maggie. That was 4 years ago. The lawsuits all collapsed just as Samuel foresaw. Dad no longer speaks to me. Mom moved to California to reinvent herself. Uncle Charles declared bankruptcy again. Uncle James vanished somewhere in Nevada. But the trust has supported 20 families to date. Construction workers whose children got cancer, a janitor from my office whose wife required heart surgery. Ordinary people with genuine problems who just needed someone to care. Each time I sign a check, I picture Grandma smiling, proud she turned her fortune into something that truly mattered. Last week, the preserve officially opened. Hundreds of families came that first day. Children built sandcastles where Grandma's rose garden once stood. Teenagers played volleyball where the fountain had been. An elderly pair sat on a bench sharing sandwiches, watching the sunset from the exact spot where Grandma and I once played chess. A small girl ran up to me, pointing at the sign. Is that you, Ethan? That's me. Why is your name on the park? My grandma wanted everyone to have a beautiful place to see the ocean, I said. She believed the best things in life should be shared. She sounds kind. Is she here? I looked at the waves, the families, the laughter on faces that would never know Maggie Miller's name, but would gain from her final act of defiance against greed. Yeah, I said, she's here. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs the reminder that family isn't defined by blood. It's about who shows up when life turns difficult. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on what true wealth means to you. And if you'd like more stories about family redemption and the surprising ways love appears in our lives, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. And remember, the greatest inheritance you can give or receive isn't money. It's knowing that you were genuinely loved.